Hello fellow cyborgs, today I would like to share with you a bunch of the books that I've purchased for myself this year, and I've tried all of their first chapters and I'm going to tell you what order I want to read them in. All of these are novels that are SFFH, so sci-fi fiction, fantasy, or horror, and all of them are from Black, Indigenous, or people of color authors. So let's dig into this stack. This is Lagoon by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a story that takes place in Lagos. It has to do with an alien invasion, and in chapter 1, the first contact the alien presence makes is with a swordfish. I really enjoyed this writing style, and this has a very summery feel to it, and since summer is right around the corner, especially here in California, this is definitely going to be close to the top of the list, so we'll just have to wait and see exactly where this holds up at the end. This is Rosewater by Tayde Thompson, which is I think it's in the future. It's a science fiction set in Africa. I want to say Nigeria, but I just looked at the back and the author was born in London to Yoruba parents, so I'm not quite sure on that. There seems to be this dome that has taken over part of the city, and every so often, I can't remember from the first chapter, I read this one a couple weeks ago, it opens and it has healing properties to it. Now, I didn't like this writing style very much, and I had been previously warned from She Wants the Diction, I think is the channel name, that this had potentially misogynist ideas in it. So I wasn't really in love with the first chapter of this one, so it's definitely not going to be towards the top. This is The Between by Tananarive Due, and I was recommended from Injiri from Onyx Pages to read Due's work in chronological order, and The Between was her first novel from what I could tell. This seems to be about a man whose world suddenly is gone wrong. I read the prologue in the first chapter and I really enjoyed this writing style as well. The prologue is about how the fact that his grandmother died twice. Once it appeared that she had a heart attack or some sort of acute thing, and he found her on the floor cold, but then after he had gotten help, she was up and moving about. And then later he gets caught in a riptide and she saves him, but then is taken by the sea. So there's this creepy, liminal sort of atmosphere going on with this. This is one of the two more thriller sorts of books that I have here in the stack, and this was definitely one of the ones that I was eager to get to, so we'll see exactly where it places at the end. The other thriller on the stack is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and this was I believe a Christmas present from Acacia over at the Chaotic Little Book Corner. This is about a neighborhood in Brooklyn being slowly and maliciously gentrified, from what I can tell. We start out hearing from Sydney, who seems to be at a really rough patch in her life. It sounds like her mother has recently died, and she has recently also been divorced, and now she is watching as her neighborhood is slowly changing and becoming hostile to her because she is Black, and a lot of the people moving into the neighborhood are white, more affluent folks. I really liked how this started out. It starts out with Sydney discovering that there was once a slavery theme park at the end of the 19th century, and it completely boggled her mind that this would have been an actual place. So we'll see. I don't think that I want to read this one quite as much as The Between by Tananarive Due, but we'll just have to see my final decisions at the end. This is Escaping Exodus by Nikki Drayden, and in fact, this was a free gift. I had a mix-up with an order from one of the online retailers that I really enjoy using right now, which is Sister Sci-Fi. I will have it linked down below, and so she kindly sent me this copy along with the books that I actually wanted. So this is a sci-fi matriarchal society that seems to be nomadic communities that use space beasts as their form of transportation. The first chapter is actually really long. I only read a part of it, and we learn about Seska, who is the queen to be, or the matriarch to be, in this specific family group, and she has prematurely awoken intentionally from her hyper sleep to see the switch over from the old beast that they were using to this new beast that the family will be living on in the future. This very much reminds me of one of those very famous Doctor Who episodes where there's a similar space beast being the home of these people, these spacefaring people. I was especially surprised though by the matriarchal society, and that was something that really intrigued me. So this ranked higher than I initially thought it would, because I previously had not had this on my radar, was not intending to pick it up at all. This is the second book that I was gifted for free from Sista Sci-Fi, and this is A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, and I've heard a lot about this because it's a kind of mermaid tale. This is the only confirmed YA that I have in the pile, and this has to do with there are some young women who are sirens and have some sort of alluring capability, and they seem to be feared and also oppressed, or at least demonized in this society. We open up by learning about, I even forget who the first character I learned from. I read this one a couple weeks ago, Tavia, and she had recently heard about a woman being murdered by her boyfriend, if I believe correctly, but now they've discovered that she's a siren, and so suddenly nobody cares about the fact that she's been murdered, and I think Tavia realizes that she's a siren. I don't remember anything that happened in the first chapter beyond that, to be perfectly honest, but I do remember thinking that the writing style was more enjoyable than I was expecting, and this definitely went higher on the list than I had previously thought it would, especially since, again, this was a surprise book. I had not expected to be reading it or picking it up anytime soon. And the final is Binti, the Complete Trilogy, also by Nnedi Okorafor. So the Binti Trilogy was originally novellas that are now bound up in this trade paperback, and it also includes a short story that comes after the first Binti novella and before the second. I have been really interested in reading Binti, but I wanted to get them all bound up in one go rather than picking up the novellas themselves. The only thing I remember hearing about Binti is that it reminds people about Starfleet of the Star Trek fame. So the idea of having this welcoming space cadet school. So the first few parts that I read to this, again, I don't think this one had chapters really because it's a novella. We hear about Binti running away from her family and her traditional role in her family society, which seems to be quite unique. It seems like she covers her, I think, skin, at least hair, if not skin as well, in a red clay from her home, which she finds really soothing and nice smelling, but she keeps getting really derogatory looks and grimaces to people in the transport areas that she's going to. So she's having to deal with this, I suppose, this form of racism while trying to better her life because she's been given a scholarship to this Starfleet sort of academy because her math scores are so high. So this definitely ranked up there on the list because I love me some Star Trek adjacent feeling things, and I really liked how the ideas of race and prejudice was being played with in the sci-fi world. So I have contemplated my choices, and I will now reveal to you in ascending order from the one that I want to get to the least now after having experienced the first chapter to the one that I will pick up next. So in last place is Rosewater. So this is the only male author in the stack, and somehow it shows in the writing style. I just think this is going to be probably more gritty, actiony. It seems to have a police procedural element to it, and I'm just not quite in the mood for that. But I'm definitely not giving up because I did buy this, but it's not at the top of the list anymore. And next is A Song Below Water. This one doesn't draw me in quite as much as the other fantasy YA that I've been reading recently, so I am not at a rush to get to this, especially since I don't think they're mermaids with tails. They're sirens as in that ability. And whenever there's a potential for mermaid and it doesn't follow through, it is unfortunately a mark against it. So I will be getting to this eventually, but it's not on the top of the list either. And then we have When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. So this is one of the two horror novels that I have in this list, horror thriller, as you will. And this is too much based in reality for me right now. I'm still reading a lot of nonfiction about issues that are discussed in this, pretty much just how the world does not appreciate, enjoy, or protect Black people. And I think this is just a little bit too on the nose for that for me right now. I'm still in a bit of an escapist mood, so I will wait for this one until I want something a little bit heavier. And next is Escaping Exodus. I still have a little bit of an attitude around this book because it had not been on my radar at all. I was also not appreciative of how long the first chapter was, but I need to remind myself that the reading experience was actually really interesting, and the world building, though it seemed dense and clunky at the beginning, like the first page or two. Now that I'm a little bit more into the swing of things, I think this will move a lot more quickly and more fluidly. So this one is very, very nicely in the middle of the pack at the moment, and I think I will be getting to this within the next few months. And then The Between, the other horror/thriller novel by Tananarive Due, is at spot number 3. I really enjoyed Due's writing style, and that's one of the things that really set apart the top 3 books of this list. The writing style hit somewhere in my happy feels section of my person. I also think that the tension and the horror elements to this are not as based in the real world, not at least as openly as in When No One Is Watching. So this one still has a bit of a like supernatural or some element like that can separate it from the real world and, be still escapist fiction, even if it's escaping into a nightmare. The number 2 spot is Lagoon by Nnedi Okorafor. So as you can tell, the Nnedi Okorafor is the top 2 choices of this stack. And so I had to decide which one I wanted to read first. And I think Lagoon had a distinctly summer feel to me. And I don't know if that's just me being prejudiced and because this is in Africa, I assume that it's hot, or if it was because it was an undersea first prologue section. I'm not quite sure, but I decided that while spring is freshly-ish here in California, it's not quite super hot. I could put this one off for maybe another month or so until it's very much in the same summer vein as I imagine this story to have a feel for me. But I'm very excited to get to Lagoon. I was previously intimidated by Okorafor and thought her prose would not be as approachable as I have found it. So really excited to give this a try. And so that means that the next novel I will pick up is Binti, which technically is a trilogy of novellas, but it's packaged like a novel and it's not, short stories. And in fact, the fact that this isn't traditionally a novel also works with that I am not really reading novels in the month of May. My present reading plans are to read a lot of the shorter fiction that I have accumulated over the years and onto my physical TBR. I don't prioritize those. I pretend that I am going to chip away at reading stories and poems daily, and then that quickly falls away. So my intention is to let the month of May be me fully embracing these shorter fiction pieces that I have and really putting them in the forefront. And if that means binge reading ones, then that's cool. And if that means reading out of 5 different volumes in a day, then that's cool too. So Binti, the fact that it's in fact 3 novellas, still kind of works with that non-novel month thing that I've self-imposed. So here's the stack in the intended order that I intend to tackle these books. Was this the order that you had hoped I would choose? Is this the order that you would choose yourself in this moment? And is there anything in this stack that you think deserves a higher spot in the stack? Please, by all means, use your powers of persuasion to manipulate me into changing my reading plans. Thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below what you have recently tried the first chapter of and what your experience of that was. And if you haven't read the first chapter in a book on your physical TBR yet, I think you should. It'll tell you an awful lot about what that reading experience is going to be. Thank you for watching, and until next time, continue to be lovely.